What's going on, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics. And today we got a reaction to Alice Cooper Band and their debut album, Pretties for You, brought to us by a friend and longtime supporter and patron of the channel, Carl. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out that Patreon link below or Patreon link on the end screen. All right. I've done an Alice Cooper top 10 for another one of our patrons, Evan David. That's really good. I don't know anything about Alice Cooper beyond that. I mean, I know who he is and, knew a couple songs, but I've never dove into his material. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the albums of the Alice Cooper Band before Alice Cooper broke off on his own. So this is the debut, so I'll tell you a little bit about them. And what you'll see in a lot of places, you see it on Spotify if you go look for the albums. They're all under Alice Cooper, but Alice Cooper Band or Alice Cooper Group is a different entity, right? They're two separate entities. They're an American rock band formed during the mid-'60s in Phoenix, Arizona. The Spiders later would change their name to Nas. That's who they were. By 1968, the struggling combo, now known as Alice Cooper, was residing in Southern California, fighting for survival on the LA club scene, developing a reputation for being a weird band, a distinction that soon got them noticed by 60s weird band. Who's it going to be? It's Frank Zappa, as well as their legendary manager, Shep Gordon. The band consisted of lead singer Vincent Furnier, who adopted the stage name Alice Cooper, Glenn Buxton on lead guitar, Michael Bruce on rhythm guitar and keyboards, Dennis Dunaway on bass, and Neil Smith on drums. The band was notorious for their elaborate, theatrical shock rock stage shows. The Alice Cooper Band was one of the few glam rock acts to achieve mainstream popularity in the U.S., rising to fame in 1971 with the hit single I'm 18 from their third album, Love It to Death, which of course we'll get to in a couple months. Success continued with the U.S. top 10 and UK #1 single School's Out from the album of the same name in 1972. The band peaked in popularity in 1973 with their next album, Billion Dollar Babies, which topped the album charts in America and Britain and spun off 3 UK top 10 singles. The supporting tour broke box office records previously held by the Rolling Stones. The band split up in 1974, but Vincent Furnier legally changed his name to Alice Cooper and began a successful solo career. In 2011, the original Alice Cooper Band was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I didn't realize there were two separate entities till a couple years ago, right? I didn't know there was Alice Cooper Band. Now we'll get to the album. Pretties for You is their debut album, released on June 25th, 1969 by Straight Records. Alice Cooper referred to the band and not its lead singer, as I shared, Vincent Furnier. The album has a psychedelic style to it, and the group had yet to develop the more concise hard rock sound that they would become famous for. Most of the tracks feature unusual time signatures and arrangements, expressive dynamics, sound effects, and an eclectic range of music influences. A few songs, such as Levity Ball, show the influence of Syd Barrett-era Pink Floyd, with whom the band hung out during the British group's U.S. tour. Alice Cooper guitarist Glenn Buxton stated he could listen to Barrett's guitar playing for hours on end. This album was a critical and commercial failure, briefly appearing, on which I'm surprised, on the Billboard Top 200 at 193, and none of its songs have ever been played live by Cooper since the release of the band's breakthrough album, Love It to Death. According to Alice Cooper Band's manager, Shep Gordon, when recording at Whitney Studios in Burbank, Frank Zappa left his brother in charge of recording while Zappa left the studio. Zappa returned later that day and informed them the album was finished, having only recorded the band rehearsing. Gordon states that there was no producer during recording, that the band had no complete songs written, that Zappa, quote, didn't spend 5 minutes in the studio and never asked to hear their material, and that the band's debut album was made up entirely of that rehearsal recording, aside from the live recording of Levity Ball. Now, this is the irony. Pretties for You won an award in Germany for Best Arranged Album of 1969. After that story I just told you. All tracks are written by or credited to everybody. Alice Cooper, Glenn Buxton, Michael Bruce, Dennis Dunaway, and Neil Smith. So before we jump into it, the music won't be in the video, but it will be at a Vimeo link below. Look, I read a ton and researched a ton and read a ton of articles on this album. I always try to do that. I do that on a lot of the stuff I do here on the channel, but especially when I'm about to start down an artist's discography, right? I want to know everything I can know up front about the artist and about the first album, because usually that shapes a lot of what's going on with them to come. This album is not liked. This album is panned. So if you're listening to this, expect to be entertained, because it's going to be interesting to see how they started. But I would guess and venture to say, I always reserve my judgment. I'm going to guess you're probably not going to like it, but it's always good history lesson to find out where it started from. And who knows? Maybe we'll be at a 9 out of 10 at the end of this. But, you know, when you consider the way it was made, they didn't even think that they were recording. I mean, this is horrible disservice that Zappa did to them by doing this to them. And they wouldn't survive something like that nowadays where we're just in this instant, quick microwave fame world. But thank goodness they did. All right, let's start it off with Titanic Overture. You're going to find a lot of songs on here are in the 1 minute to 2 minute range. So this is going to be one of them. All right, I'm in the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Carl. Okay, obviously not a lot to say there. We got Michael Bruce on Gothic organ. First thing you've ever heard from the Alice Cooper Band is this, but in a way it kind of fits if they're theatrical. This kind of sets this with the organ, this theatrical type of atmosphere. So I can't blast it too much. Next up, we got another 1.5-minute song. We got 10 minutes before the worm. Okay, that wasn't any good at all. As you can tell, they're just warming up, man. They're just practicing. So I hate to slam these guys for this, right? Almost a little Beatlesque a little bit there towards the end. And, you know, I don't know. I don't got anything great to say. I mean, I could try to sugarcoat it and find the positives, but not a good song, but it wasn't meant to be. So now we go to Swing Low, Sweet Cheerio. Guitars, Michael Bruce is actually singing the main vocals on this one. I mean, it's 5.5 minutes long, so I'm guessing this is the first proper song. All right, Swing Low, Sweet Cheerio. At least it was a proper song with lyrics and everything. You know, it's almost like a San Francisco 60s rock song for most of it, and then it broke down into almost a quasi jazz type of, I mean, with the harmonica, of course, breakdown in there. It went on way too long, but it was okay. I mean, it's hard to criticize these guys. I mean, I'll get to it at the end of the album, but just being put in this position that they were put in. But all right, next up, another song under 2 minutes. We got Today Mueller. Today Mueller, although it should be Mueller, but Mueller. I mean, the song had a hook at least. The backing vocals were atrocious. I have no idea what the song's about. All right, next up we have Living. All right, Buxton's like fuzz tone guitar in there almost wipes out everything else, right? It just kind of goes over everything else. It's too loud. It's pretty well done. This is the first song that had a possibility. It could have even maybe been turned into a single with the right production. Remember, they said they didn't even have any of the songs completely written. And this, I see it when I'm reading the lyrics. That's why I don't even bring any of the lyrics up. But this one could have been worked out if they had a proper producer. I don't know if I want to get on this rant now or I'll save it to the end. But I guess I'll save it to the end. But think proper producer. Producers are so important to artists, and especially to artists making their first album or two. And I'll get into those examples and stuff later on. But I mean, the fact that they didn't have that, it's frustrating me. And this happened all that. I know it works out well for them, but man. So we're going to finish out the first side with Field of Regret. Fields of Regret, like the last song, Living. This song with an actual producer and the dynamics in the studio, like the sound dynamics, are just awful, right? The drumming on this thing so far sounds awful. And it's not the drummer. You know, the bass line on here, Dennis's bass line is pretty good. And Glenn's guitar work is also pretty good. It almost had a little early Black Sabbath sound in places. Like, this could have been something, but it's kind of a disjointed mess the way it's produced and put together. Once again, I'm going to say as we end side one, it's not their fault. They were just rehearsing. They were just practicing. Imagine if you're a weightlifter like I've been a lot of my life. Imagine if you were warming up on the bench press with 10-pound dumbbells and somebody walked by and said, oh, he's working out with 10-pound dumbbells, which that's what you do. That's fine. But what if you could really do 100-pound dumbbells? But you know what I mean? Like it's so unfair to like judge somebody on this, but that's what we're here to do. Start off side two with No Longer Umpire, coming in a little over 2 minutes. I mean, maybe a little Pink Floyd, Syd Barrett early influence on that. Once again, just, you know, it's a fragment of a song. It's too loud because it wasn't produced correctly. Because once again, they were rehearsing. I don't mean to keep beating that drum, but this one is another song, maybe not quite as much as Fields of Regret or Living, but it also had possibilities. So we've had 3 songs in a row here that definitely had possibilities. Now we got Levity Ball. This was actually recorded live at the Cheetah. So this is a live recording. I mean, they're all live, but you know what I'm saying, a live performance. Don't know why this is on. I couldn't find why it was on here, just that that's what it was. All right, so a very lo-fi recording of a live show, which this song probably works live. It's a little rough on the album. This is definitely early Pink Floydish, right? Astronomy, Donomy, that kind of stuff. No Longer Umpire was there, but this one's really there. Next up, we got another really short one, BB on Mars. BB on Mars, not much to say except for this one also had a nice sound to it, and it could have been worked into a song. It's like a fourth of a song. It could have been worked into a good song. There's stuff there. Now we'll come to Reflected, their debut single, which was reworked into Elected. Reflected, Elect, I guess you find something that rhymes with it, right? Off their 1973 album, Billion Dollar Babies. All right, Reflected. I can see why they chose this as a single. By far the most developed song all the way around. Instrumentation wasn't mixed too bad compared to a lot of these other songs on here. Alice sounded good. It was a completely written song, or pretty close. So definitely the highlight of the album. Next up, we have Apple Bush. All right, Apple Bush also had possibilities. I thought Alice sounded good on here. I don't know what the song's about, but it's a lengthy song as far as lyrics wise compared to a lot of these others. So this one also had a possibility with the producer to being an album track that could stand and be fine. I think it is fine, but it could have been even improved on. But the production on this one seems much better, like it was on Reflected, like they spent a little more time. Now we're gonna get another one of those short songs. Actually, the second shortest song on here, Earwigs to Eternity. All right, Earwigs to Eternity. This is another one, not quite as much as maybe BB on Mars, which I thought really had a possibility of being something. But another shorter one that I see why they sort of put it on here, because it actually has more lyrics than some of the longer ones. But you could feel that they could work this out. They're about halfway done working this song out. You could see it had possibilities if, once again, they had a producer to lead them and then had time to work it out. And we're going to go to the final track, Changing, Arranging. All right, Changing, Arranging. It had too much going on with the instrumentation on here. It started veering off in the wrong directions a couple times. But overall, it's a pretty complete song. It has the best written verse on this entire album, and it's the last verse you hear. I've got a never-ending battle inside, just trying to rectify my personal pride. I swear I don't know what it's got over me, but I know it doesn't want to be free. I mean, that's really good. That's really good. Now we'll get into my final thoughts on the album. Look, I'm not going to have any honorable mentions or faves. I always do. I don't think I've ever have not, but I mean, I'll tell you this much. The songs that definitely had possibilities that could have been on a proper album that was actually produced and time was spent. Living, Fields of Regret, BB on Mars, even though it's short, Reflected, the best song on here, Apple Bush, and Changing, Arranging. Look, that's 6 songs just right off the top that if they would have had more time and care put into it, could have made a good, solid album, right? Throw a couple more tracks in there. I don't know. I mean, it's only 38 minutes, but I don't know why they made it 13 songs. They could have cut a couple of these off. Maybe they saw possibilities and just figured we would too. Now we're going to get to my overall score. And this album's about to get the lowest score that we've ever given to an album. But I got to preface it by saying this. Obviously, they become great. I mean, I don't know any of these other albums. Like I said, I just know a few of their songs. But you can hear it in here, but this is absolutely so unfair to them. Like, I'm pissed off listening to this because I can see the possibilities. Let me go in there and produce this thing. I can get these guys somewhere in no time. Like, it's an absolute atrocity that Zappa signs him and puts no effort into it. Like, it's totally so wrong to them. You probably needed material for the record label. It's like, whatever. Like, to do this, these guys, can you imagine the frustration if you were the Alice Cooper band and they told you, no, your album's already done? Like, I would be going insane. The frustration level of like, look, this is not really us. We're just trying to work this out. And when you talk about great producers, I mean, you got to start with the lowest hanging fruit, right? George Martin. Would the Beatles be the Beatles without George Martin? I would say they would not be, with his guiding hand. Now, eventually that became more an advisor, but he was still there to say a little bit, And the guys didn't always love him in the moment, because who likes somebody telling you what to do? You want to do what you want to do, but you got to have that guy there. There's a lot of music history where the producers have screwed up artists, but most of the time you need them there, especially for the first few albums. You're trying to figure out how to record. Maybe you've done a demo, but like truly record an album. Like, you need their guidance. You need their opinion. You need their help. So it's awful. So I hate even grading this. I almost didn't grade it, but I grade everything. just because it's not indicative of what I think of these guys. Even from this album, you can hear it, but it's time. It's going to be a 3.0 out of 10. But like I said, not their fault. So I'm very curious, if you're watching this album, you're either a devout follower of this channel or you're a huge Alice Cooper super fan. So I'm curious to your thoughts on this album. What do you think of it? Like I said, it's still interesting to see the history and how they started, but just awful that they did to him. But I really want to know what your thoughts are. Well, thank you to Carl for bringing this. As I said, we're about to run these. So next month will be album number 2, and we're gonna run them. So thanks again for watching. Until next time, guys, I will see you.